And now we're going to open the floor for questions.
It's Melanie speaking. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction to deafblind functional capacity assessments, Teresa. We have some questions coming through. I'll start at the top. Do you have suggestions on where or who to reach out to if there are questions regarding lighting for an individual?
Teresa speaking. That's a great question. I learned this on the go as an occupational therapist. I read up about lighting online, using the sensory access guidelines from the Ontario Deafblind Association. I also learned a lot from electricians, doing joint assessments with electricians. I found that by going room to room and in the house with my clients helped me to understand what their lighting needs were in each room. It helped me, the electrician helped me to learn about different lighting options. The other suggestion that I actually heard about today from a colleague is there are lighting specialists and they work in lighting shops. So as OTs, we have such broad knowledge, we can't be expected to know like all the latest information about lighting and different technologies that are out there. So there are some people that you can reach out to, electricians who are experienced in lighting specialists. I mean, we could do a webinar as well, I think, or a fact sheet at Deafblind Information Australia on lighting and what to look for and how you can support people with that kind of technology.
It's Melanie speaking. Great. Thanks. Do orthoptist reports ever include recommendations around lighting?
Yes, the orthoptists that I've worked with include recommendations for lighting. So that might be around the person would benefit from a lighting assessment around their home. Typically, lighting in the workplace is addressed by the workplace. Orthoptists will also recommend task lighting. So that's been my experience of working with orthoptists is that they do recommend lighting.
Right, thanks. It's Melanie speaking. Next question. Have you noticed any changes in the NDIS approving smart devices such as smartphones and tablets? I've had some difficulty applying for both devices despite clients requiring both devices for different reasons.
Absolutely. I've noticed it's more difficult to apply for smart devices, with the change about a year ago in replacement of supports that became more challenging. And I guess what I found has helped so far is being able to justify what that is replacing. So, an example might be there is no AAC device out there that I know of that has speech to text. It's only the tablets that do that. So for somebody that already had a communication device approved in their plan, we were able to justify a replacement for support for a tablet and a speech to text app. And I know that phones are a bit harder because they are considered to be mainstream. And I do, I think sometimes that these are test cases as well. But for example, I do know that my colleague at the moment is going to be applying for a smartphone because the person prefers to use the phone for magnification rather than using a smaller video magnifier. So it's very tricky, yes.
Thanks, Teresa. Melanie speaking. Next question. Thank you for a great webinar. I'm curious about a couple of things. The first thing is, what is your reaction to the recent changes proposed for the NDIS Act that direct assessments of functional capacity for assessment to the NDIS explicitly to exclude personal and environmental circumstances?
That's an interesting question because I'm not clear on what that actually means. So I'm probably not up to date on that. But for all of the people with disabilities, occupational performance, as we showed you with the model of the person environment occupation performance model, is clearly affected by person factors and environment factors. So that proposal is a little bit confusing to me, and I probably need a bit more context and information to understand what they're proposing. So sorry, I can't answer that so well. And I think
There's
the
it's Melanie speaking. There's a second part to that.
yeah,
What is your understanding of the ICANN tool? I dash capital C, capital A, capital N, ICANN tool, and the history of its use with deafblind people, particularly in interpreted contexts. So people, I guess, deafblind people using sign language interpreters.
I think you're going to have to remind me what the ICANN tool is. Cannot recall off the top of my head what that is. So maybe if the person who wrote that question can provide a bit more details about the tool, that would be great.
Yeah, it's Melanie speaking. You can put that in the question section, and I'll read that out. Okay, next question. We'll come back to the other one. You made a recommendation for a text just before the assistive technology slide. I believe it was around communication. Could you please share the name of the book again?
Yes, I can. I'll have to pull up my notes. Um, just a moment while I do that. So, if you look up the Ontario Deaf Blind Association, it's called Accessibility Guidelines to Sensory Loss. I'll just pull up the name on my computer. And it's the third edition, 2020.
Okay, I'll see if I can. It's Melanie speaking. I'll see if I can get that link in the chat.
Thank
Take
you.
it a
I can
moment.
pop that. I can pop that link in the chat. I've just got it.
Okay,
So
yep.
it's called the Accessibility Guidelines for Sensory Loss, 2020, third edition, and it's from the Deafblind Ontario Services.
Okay. Next question. How do you go about supporting people who are deafblind but also have physical disabilities such as cerebral palsy and may not have the ability to use their hands?
That's a great question. Communication. I think what I would think about is going back to the life space model and understanding how that person best receives information and how they best express themselves. And with your team exploring how he can be supported to express himself through that life space model. Um, it does remind me of like, yeah, we do work with people who have multiple disabilities, and that can be a challenge if someone can't use their hands effectively. So then we're reading behavior, and we're reading gestures, and we're reading facial expressions and vocalizations. And there's some great webinars on the Deafblind Information Australia website about high quality interactions and attunement. And that might be a really great place to go to get more information as well.
Right, Melanie speaking. Next question. Vision Australia OTs, actually, Vision Australia OTs and orthoptists are trained to conduct gliding assessments, particularly for NDIS reporting purposes. So it's great to know about that resource there and the training that they get. Okay, keeping on going. Does Deafblind Australia, so the advocacy body for people with deaf blindness in Australia, offer orthoptic, audiology, or orientation and mobility services?
So Deafblind Australia is an advocacy organisation, but they can certainly, my understanding, they can direct people to those services. Um, and my understanding is that they don't directly provide those services. Those services are provided by just various disability providers throughout Australia.
It's Melanie speaking, and on the Deafblind Information Australia website, under the services menu, there is a directory of some providers across the country who provide services to people with sensory impairment. So you're most likely to get the orthoptic and O&M under vision providers or deafblind providers, and the audiology under hearing specialist services. And a little bit more around the ICANN tool. That is the support needs assessment tool being developed by the NDIA and Melbourne University to be used for all support needs assessments on the scheme moving forward.
Yeah, Teresa speaking. I do recall what you're talking about now, and this is an assessment that OTs are already using in their functional capacity assessments. It's the care and needs scale, and I would say that that is a tool in my toolbox, and I would not personally, and I would say a lot of my colleagues would not use that to be the only tool to identify support needs for a person, because again, it's there's a lot of context to be understood in any person's life. So I would hope that they would be considering using a toolbox of tools rather than any one assessment alone.
It's Melanie speaking. Any thoughts about how the questions or assessments on that tool are interpreted in a sign language context? Thinking about how the questions are worded or anything there.
Teresa speaking. I don't usually actually word them with my clients. They're not actually an assessment tool that I go and do questionnaire based. They're not a questionnaire based one. It's something that I complete after I've observed the client
Mm-hmm.
across all areas. So, because there is a lot of interpretation and knowledge involved of the person to actually complete that assessment. So, yeah, just reiterating, it's not a tool I would sit down and do as a questionnaire with somebody. It's something that I do after I've done my, my observations and I've collected all my information about the person. And then I would do that at the end. And if there's any bits of information that I might have missed in that previous kind of assessment process, then I'd go back and talk to them, explicitly about that area on the care and needs scale. Yeah.
Right. It's Melanie speaking. Questions keep coming in. Are there any network of stakeholders like professionals or families or adults or siblings? I'm presuming in Australia. In India, we at Sense International provide support to them. What resources are you using, or how do you engage them in service delivery and advocacy? It's a big question.
It is a big question. I'm just rereading it. Okay. So in Australia, we have a number of like peer-led organizations that support each other. We have, for example, we have Deafblind Australia, we have Deafblind Victoria, we have the Hunter Group in New South Wales, we have Deafblind WA, and they unite and they advocate for their needs, whether it to government, etc. We also have Deafblind Information Australia, which we are an organisation that strives to provide high quality information. We provide workshops and online training, and our aim is to build capacity workforce capacity so that we have more people who understand about deaf blindness and can support people and their families with deaf blindness. Um, and yeah, these organizations have professionals within them that are supporting them to engage in service delivery and advocacy. So, for an example, in Deafblind Western Australia, there's a leadership program at the moment that's building skills in the younger generation coming up to be leaders in their field.
It's Melanie speaking, and in terms of professional services, there are a number of deafblind people, I guess, are serviced by various organisations, private and or not-for-profit, across the country, depending on where they choose to go or what might be available in their area. And we have a very small pool of deafblind specialist services in a couple of locations as well, but hoping to build that deafblind capacity wherever deafblind people are through the work of Deafblind Information Australia. Yeah. Okay, so we've got going back to just a little clarification from someone around the ICANN is an assessment tool that NDIS wants to introduce as a one-stop shop for all participants, regardless of disability, and it's not the CANS, as in CANS. Yeah, is that anything else you want to say there or add to that, Teresa?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. I'm not familiar with the ICANNs, but I can see that it is a different tool. And unfortunately I don't know much about it. The other tool that might be very helpful for people to know is that the International Classification of Functioning, we now have a deaf-blind core set, which is a very helpful framework for assessment and understanding the needs of the person with deaf blindness.
Really, Melanie speaking. Next question. Oh, just another plug for other people who have OTs, orthotists, and O&Ms, Guide Dog, New South Wales, ACT, South Australia, NT, and Victoria. Yeah. So you'll find all those on our service directory. Next question. Do you have recommendations for who to connect with in New South Wales as support coordinator for deafblind people? I find that my deafblind client is not well supported with services.
I'm in Western Australia, so I'm not familiar with services in other states. I think maybe the first place to look is the Deafblind Information Australia website in the services directory. But also thinking about the diagnosis of the person. So, for example, there are some organizations out there like Child Syndrome Australia and Usher Kids. And if your particular person has a diagnosis and there's a group, you can link in with them and they might be able to make recommendations. I think it's always very helpful to, share information and recommendations with the people that live near you. Yeah. There are some organizations, I know of one organization in Melbourne that provides support coordination in deaf blindness. But other than that, I don't know of any like specialist organizations. I think it's really about trying to share information with you find someone that's who really interested in learning and sharing information about the condition and in-depth blindness and referring them to resources because there are a lot of people out there that just really want to learn and to support you to have the needs met.
Right. Melanie speaking, just addressing questions about the recording. Yes, all our webinars are recorded, and once they're edited, transcripts are ready, they'll be put on our website and participants will be notified. Everyone on our mailing list will be notified. And just another plug there for New South Wales Services. MyGain has deafblind, has support coordinators who are experienced in supporting people with deafblindness. Okay, another question. In your experience, is the NDIS recognising the unique disability that is deafblindness in terms of funding or supports, or not? And for those clients that have hearing loss and later development of vision loss, any tips for having the NDIS recognise the dual sensory impairment?
This is a good question. In my experience, the NDIS recognizing deafblindness is patchy. And there's a lot of work that is happening through deafblind advocacy organisations to have it specifically recognised as its own disability. I believe a couple of years ago it was added as its own category, but people were still being kind of like added as vision and hearing separately. So there's still no kind of consistency happening, and we do need it to happen. Um, I find that some people are being funded well, and then other people are not. Um, so it is an ongoing thing that we are all working towards. For those that have hearing loss and later develop vision loss, it's really important to meet the accessibility, the NDIS accessibility kind of criteria. So providing that really strong evidence of the additional sensory loss later in life. So if it's vision, ophthalmology report, and if you can, adding in the orthoptics functional vision assessment to give that really strong information that there is an acquired, it's acquired deaf blindness given the later onset of the vision loss. So yeah, it is possible for NDIS to recognise the dual sensory um, loss. It just requires some hard work to get that recognised.
It's Melanie speaking. Yes, I definitely agree. And it's a little bit hit and miss if your arguments land with the particular planner or person making the decision at the NDIS. But yes, we certainly do have success. And then I guess medical reports identifying that future need. And some sort of argument around if you address that now and build skills now around that future loss, you are saving costs in the future kind of thing. Yeah, but it's a tricky one and a very difficult one. I think this might be, the last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Thank you. I am completing a functional capacity assessment for a child with Usher type 2. For those probably born with a degree of hearing loss, and then sometime in their childhood, early adulthood, or their adulthood, start to lose their vision. What are the best websites for assistive technology and supporting families? And this is their first assessment for a deafblind child. Let me just swap interpreters. Thanks. Oh, yeah, great.
I think when I did my first deafblind assessment, what really helped me was I perused the AT providers for vision. There's like Vision Australia, Visibility, there's various ones across the country. And that once I understood what the occupational performance issues were, that's where I went to understand, what could be the possible solutions? So first having a really great understanding of what is their current hearing, what is their vision, what are the gaps, how does that child best receive most reliably receive information, and that will guide you to the type of AT that you might recommend. Um, Reading up on Usher syndrome and understanding the underlying conditions that come with it will help you understand what the occupational performance issues are. So with Usher syndrome, Usher type 2, um, well, with all the Ushers, retinitis pigmentosa is the underlying eye condition. So understanding what to look for and how it can progress will be really helpful for you, and understanding where the child is at in terms of like or, AT for hearing, depending on where the hearing levels are, you can linking in with the audiologist. Like they may have prescribed things already. Is there anything in addition that you can support with? Sometimes what I find is someone might have a device from an audiologist, but not know how to use it or implement it consistently across different environments. So that's where I find linking in with the audiologist can be quite helpful, and understanding that. Sometimes if you have the funding, even going along to an audiology appointment to understand a bit about their hearing, and under what conditions can they hear best and what their needs are. Um, so yeah, good luck with the first FCA for a child with Usher type 2 syndrome. And like linking that family in with Usher kids would also be a great option if they're not already linked in.
Right, it's Melanie speaking. So that brings us to the end of our time. Thank you so much, Teresa, for the presentation and fielding all those questions. Thank you to our interpreters, Karen and Dave, and our captioner, Lee.